Just another day in the life of the Albanese Labor government, a government that might have less than 50 days left, the way things are going. The polls are down and the spending is up. So much so that we have to worry that inflation will be pushed up again and the Reserve Bank will be forced to delay future rate cuts or even push them up again, given the billions of dollars of extra spending the unofficial election campaign is already producing. The first term of the Albanese government has increased government spending more than any first-term government since Gough Whitlam in the 1970s, according to analysis by the Australian Financial Review, with a $130 billion spending spree that economists warn could lead to higher taxes. Yeah, well, it will lead to higher taxes and it could keep a lid on interest rates, keep them higher for longer too. This reckless spending being rolled out week after week is a clue to just how desperately worried Labor is about losing the election. Another clue is their attack on Peter Dutton today, accusing him of buying bank shares way back in 2008, mind you, just before the Rudd government announced a bank bailout.
Is Labor accusing the opposition leader of insider trading?
That's a matter for Peter Dutton to explain.
Yeah, the Prime Minister's happy for the smear to be out there, but not too keen to be closely associated with it himself. Last night, Albanese did what most Labor leaders do when they want some comfort and support or a bit of a boost.
Prime Minister, welcome to Q&A.
Good to be here.
Yeah, they turn up on the ABC. And when this PM does a question and answer session, there's one story that always gets told.
I grew up in a single-parent household. There was just me and Mum, and she was an invalid pensioner.
Gee, I think we've heard that one before. I guess that story will be recycled more often in the campaign than the promise to deliver cheaper mortgages, reduce the cost of living and cut power prices by $275 a year. But it was on the lack of action over anti-Semitism where the Prime Minister encountered the most strife last night.
Prime Minister, as a Jewish mother of 4 boys, when will it be safe for us to openly identify as Jews in Australia?
It certainly should be open to you every day, today and every day. The samples of anti-Semitism, one would be too many, but there have been far, far too many. And it is frankly completely unacceptable that a young Jewish person feels like they can't identify openly or wear their school uniform on public transport around. So it is something that I think is a source of enormous regret. The government is doing what we can, but again, this is an issue which the whole of society has to address.
Yeah, it's the same old passive response from Albo, isn't it? All this is happening around him, it seems. He doesn't understand the responsibility he has to lead.
I think that we just need to take a strong stance. The Prime Minister needs to take a strong stance on this. Yeah. Not just saying we're doing as much as we can, because we're not.
We've been the first government to pass laws outlawing Nazi symbols. We've been the first government to pass laws outlawing hate speech. We have done, in terms of the law, everything that we have been requested to do.
He's done everything he's been requested to do. He just doesn't get it, does he?
We are hurting. You're our Prime Minister, you're our leader. There was hate speech at Lakemba. Nothing was done. The hate speech happened after October 7th at the Sydney Opera House. Nothing was done. We've suffered because nothing was done. If you had have done something then, it would stop them.
I'll just let the Prime Minister respond.
I understand. You know, I was on Insider's program, regular on ABC programs, on the Sunday morning after the October 7 terrorist attacks. We unequivocally condemn them. On the Monday, which was the next day before the Opera House, I did media. I called for that activity to not go ahead. Then on the Tuesday morning, I did media, condemning it unequivocally again.
Really? Defending himself by pointing to what he said at the time and how it was unequivocal. We've looked at it. I've shown it to you before. It was the bare minimum. In fact, it was striking for its lack of passion, its lack of anger. There was a lack of disgust at one of the most grotesque terrorist attacks in all of human history.
Well, this is an abhorrent attack on Israel. This is indiscriminate. Civilians being targeted, killed and murdered, and as well, many of them being taken as hostages. This is a dreadful circumstance that people didn't see coming, wasn't foreshadowed, a shock attack. I spoke to the Israeli ambassador to Australia who's in Israel this morning, and he, of course, was very shaken, as you would expect. And this action is ongoing. It must stop. Israel has a right to defend itself, which is what it is doing.
It's the absolute bare minimum he could say. You could not say less than that in response to what happened. And rather than get stronger and angrier as more facts came in, Albanese remained weak. This is the response he's referred us back to the next morning after a Muslim sheikh in Sydney led a group celebrating the Israeli terrorist slaughter.
Well, there's nothing to celebrate by the murder of innocent civilians going about their day for people who were some of those who've been captured are young people who are attending a rave, you know, enjoying life, enjoying each other's company. There's nothing to celebrate here.
There's nothing to celebrate. That's all he said. There's nothing to celebrate. The slaughter of innocents. Yet he had a celebration the previous night in the streets of Sydney, describing it as a slaughter, a day of victory. And he just says we shouldn't celebrate these things. That's where Albanese lost it. That's where he shows his total lack of understanding of the requirement for leadership. That was one of the most disgusting and worrying things I've ever seen on any street in Australia. And the Prime Minister just said that. That's the response that Albanese claims is evidence of his strong response and leadership against anti-Semitism. It's just unbelievable. It actually does the opposite, of course. It just demonstrates how weak he's been. He claims to have a lifelong record of railing against anti-Semitism. Yet we know as an activist he joined protests accusing Israel of genocide and even smearing the Israeli Defence Forces over the alleged targeting of children.
The response of Israel has been to meet children throwing rocks with helicopter gunships, with tanks and with missiles.
Yeah, I showed you last night that Albanese gets angry about all the wrong things. It's easy for him to fire up back in those days against Israel, and he always loves to fight Tories. But we need a leader who gets passionate about standing up for Australians.